I kind of like.
Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Hayward City Council. I'm going to call this meeting to order and I'm going to ask Council Member Wahab, are you with us? Yes, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening.
Okay, all rise. I believe there's a flag, yes, in the chambers.
We do have one, yes.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. Justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor, good evening. Councilmember Andrews.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember Lamnin.
Present.
Councilmember Marquez.
Present.
Councilmember Salinas.
Here.
Councilmember Wahab.
Here.
Councilmember Cermeño.
I am here.
Mayor Halliday.
Here.
Thank you.
That brings us to our closed session announcement. Mr. Lawson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Council met in closed session this evening at 6:15 p.m. pursuant to posted notice in the Brown Act. With all members present and no public speakers, the Council discussed one item, labor negotiations with its negotiating team. The Council provided direction to staff but otherwise took no reportable action. The closed session adjourned at 6:53 p.m.
Thank you. That brings us to public comments this evening. This is your opportunity to comment on any items that are not otherwise on our agenda. And before we go into that, let me just announce too that that under our consent calendar tonight, there are 3 items. Items 1 and 2 are being removed from the agenda and we will take them up, I believe, next week. So I just wanted to let everybody know that. And with that, I will ask if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment. Please come forward, Mr. Watley. Okay.
Okay, thanks. Hi, good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. My name is David Watley, and for members of the public who might not have heard me speak previously, just a little bit of background information about me. I grew up in both the city of Union City and the city of Hayward. I graduated from Mount Eden High School a long time ago. Go Monarchs. So, I actually, since, leaving Hayward, I went to UCLA where I studied political science. And anyhow, I've had a whole kind of history of things that have happened since then. But I'm currently back in the area, visiting with family. I actually recently relocated out of state to Idaho. Which is a beautiful state if you haven't been there. It's kind of like where the Rocky Mountains are located. And so I'm here in the Bay Area with family for just a temporary period of time. So I thought I'd come by and say hi to old friends in the community. I wanted to say that actually right before I came here, I attended this community kind of outreach program that's at one of that's run by one of the local faith-based organizations here in the city of Hayward. It's called Feed My Sheep that's run by New Hope Christian Fellowship off of Mission Boulevard, like going towards San Leandro. And they have this really incredible program where members of the community can go and get a box of groceries for the week. It's every Tuesday. I believe it starts at 5 p.m. And they also offer a meal to members of the community. So I went there last week to check it out, and I went there again this week, and I want to say that I'm really impressed by the work that they're doing to serve the community, and I think that I hope to see more of that type of sort of charity that in this community, in my hometown community. It's nice to see that happening. So another thing I wanted to mention is that as I actually walked from the church. It's not located too far away from here, and I came across to get here to City Council, and I came across this really cool painting on Mission Boulevard on one of the businesses, and it was done by a guy named Ron Thompson. It's like a picture of like two girls, like three kids, like teenagers, whatever, and it says City of Hayward in the background along with Aloni. So I was wondering if there's a way to find out more about that artist.
Okay, well, I think maybe we can ask staff to follow up with you later, and your time is up, but thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay. We have next Ellen Mayfield.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Good evening. My name is Ellen Mayfield, and I live in Hayward's Glen Eden community in a townhome that my family has been in our family for the past 30 years. Unfortunately, I have neighbors that are habitual drug users of methamphetamine and I believe crack cocaine. And their drug use has become so disruptive that I can actually smell it in my home when they're using these substances. I am very concerned about their drug use. The odor, the fumes come in through my vent system, and I can smell it throughout the entire home. It causes me headaches and dizziness, lightheadedness. I've been to the hospital 3 times at this point, and for racing, because my pulse is racing, my resting pulse is higher than 100, which is significantly high for me. And it also increases my blood pressure. It elevates my blood pressure. Sometimes I wake up from sleeping and I'll smell this horrible odor, and then I'll realize that the smoke is what woke me up, and my heart is just racing as if it will pound out of my chest. So those are some of the effects of the use. I have done all I can do. I'm here tonight because I need your help. I've reached out to the homeowner who was unhelpful. I've reached out to the HOA, Hayward Police Department, Sheriff's Department, Hayward Vice and Narcotics Division, Cal EPA, the Drug Enforcement Agency. And finally, I reached out to the Public Health Department, and they connected me with BASTA. And that was when I learned about a smoke-free ordinance that is in place in the unincorporated areas of Hayward. And I just thought if only that ordinance were in place here, it would make it so much easier for me to resolve this issue with my neighbor, since a lot of the other things that I've tried have failed. I will say that the Hayward Police Department has been helpful, but their hands are tied because there's only so much they can do with the laws in place that protect this behavior to a certain extent. But my request is for this body to create a similar ordinance for the incorporated areas of Hayward, because it would be very helpful if that were in place. And I just wonder, it looks like I'm almost at time. So I do have one question for the council. And that question is there any work being done to create a similar ordinance for the incorporated areas of the city of Hayward that is similar to the one that's working very well for Alameda County in the unincorporated areas? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll let our city manager respond to that question.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Mayfield. And if you want to contact my office at 583-4300, the city attorney and I were just conversing that we do have our social nuisance ordinance. So we'd like to maybe understand a little bit more about the situation that is going on with your neighbors and whether it is a rental property and how we might be able to address it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I will say that that other, the ordinance is also under discussion, has been brought up, but I think this is a good idea that please contact the city manager's office tomorrow. We'll see if we can help you in some other way too. Thank you. And the next speaker, I don't have a name. I have Samsung SM G781V. Can we?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that. My name is Jaime Arteaga. Good evening, City Council members. Today, I'm just calling in real quick to let you guys know I'm a member of the Northern California Carpenters Union, and tonight I'm calling on behalf of the 40,000 Northern California members, and most importantly, the 4,200 Alameda County members. I want to let you guys know that lately it's been difficult to obtain work in this county, especially one that pays a good living wage. And just forget about living wages, just a construction job that offers a good retirement fund and health benefits. And none of this has been free. I've been a member for 30 years, and what I'm speaking for the future carpenters, our apprentices. One way to fight poverty is to attain good paying fair wage jobs, which is becoming really scarce nowadays. And the reason because of that is irresponsible contractors that do not abide by fair labor standards and wages. I'm actually a field representative. I walk a lot of jobs. I run into a lot of guys working on construction sites making $18 an hour, and I know it meets the minimum wage, but using their own tools in California, there's a tool law that if you're using your own tools, you have to be paid double the minimum wage. So that's one way contractors cheat, and we can't compete with that. So we can't police them. We try to do, but there's so much going on that we can't police everything. So we're asking for help. We just want fair. Whatever you guys can help us policing these job sites, we'd appreciate it. Just that way so we can attain some more work. I'm 53 years old, and I was able to earn a good pension, which is coming on when I retire is really good. So I'm asking for you guys' help, maybe a little empathy, because everybody wants the American dream, right? They want to attain it. And one way to fight poverty is to join our union and earn good wages and good benefits and have a fair retirement. Thank you. I didn't prepare a speech or anything. I just decided, I thought I'd call in and say good, hello, and I appreciate your time and thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, I don't think we have any other speakers. Madam City Clerk, do you see anyone else with their hands up?
No, Madam Mayor, I'm not aware of anyone else wishing to
Okay.
speak.
All right, so with that, I will close public comments and we'll move on to comments from our city manager.
Well, I am full of good news tonight. So I have hardware with me. So lots of fun stuff to share with the council tonight. I'm going to start with this lovely award here, if everyone can see it. The City of Hayward, along with our partners at Dahlin Architecture, were the recipients of a 2022 Award of Excellence from the California chapter of the American Planning Association for our work on the Sohe Mixed Use Project. The purpose of the APA California Awards program is to encourage quality in planning and increase the public's awareness of the planning profession through recognizing outstanding achievement in the planning field. APA California annually presents numerous planning awards to honor the most outstanding efforts in planning in California. The program honors innovative plans and projects, distinguished APA members, and lay contributors to planning and achievements of APA California sections. The City of Hayward and Dahlin Architecture were selected for our work on the Sohe project and recognized these efforts as demonstrating a significant achievement for an area in accomplishing positive change as a result of planning efforts. The awards were presented at the California Chapter APA Conference held October 1st through 4th. So congratulations and kudos to our planning staff and everyone who was involved in that project work early on. And then our second lovely plaque here is, let's see if you can see it there. Oh, there we go. From the Municipal Information Systems Association of California, which is the governance body for our IT professionals throughout the state of California. And for the third year in a row, the Hayward IT department has received an award from the Award for Excellence in IT Practices Committee. It represents recognition from municipal IT leaders and peers for Hayward's implementation and maintenance of best practices in IT operations, procedures, and governance. So kudos to our outstanding IT team and Geraldine here representing that staff and Adam Kosterzak, who leads that department. So kudos to that group. Couple other items. Another award. The Hayward Downtown Library and Learning Center received a special commendation from the American Institute of Architects California last week. It was part of the Winners of Climate Action Awards, which is the highest level design awards that the AIA California bestows on architectural projects. All honorees were required to meet rigorous environmental performance standards in response to rapidly changing environment. These awards recognize architects who have protected and enhanced the delicate interface between the natural and the built environment, while also stewarding our precious and limited resources. In awarding this special commendation for design integration to Nolan Tam Architects for the Downtown Library, the awards jury recognized that the library and plaza represent a commitment to sustainability and community. In addition to the many environmental features, the project includes one of the largest capture, treatment, and reuse systems of water in the state of California. It was described as a very well integrated project that reaches out beyond the footprint of the building to achieve its net zero energy performance while providing a broad range of programs and amenities for the community. So kudos to our public works staff, our library staff, and others who were responsible for implementing that project. And it is a beautiful facility for those who have not had a chance to visit it. Just another library comment and recognition that October 16th through the 22nd is National Friends of the Library Week. The City of Hayward and the Hayward Public Library would like to thank our amazing Friends of the Library group for their good work and unwavering support of the library and its service to the community. As you all know, the Friends of the Library played a key role in gathering support for Measure C and helping us build this lovely downtown library and learning center that we just recognized, and in raising funds for a lot of the materials inside. What many people don't realize is the level of support the Friends provide for the purchase of library materials, online databases, and also for the support of programs throughout the year. For this 2022 calendar year, the Friends of the Library have already provided over $80,000 for the Canopy, Hoopla, and Overdrive databases, which allow library card holders to download or stream ebooks, audiobooks, and popular movies. In addition, the Friends have provided close to $20,000 for summer reading prizes, author talks, and dance and music performances for people of all ages. So a very special thank you to our Friends of the Hayward Library. And last but not least, a pretty outstanding recognition and grant award that we got this afternoon. For those who have been following the progress of our Stack Center construction project, we were awarded an $8.6 million grant today from the California State Library to basically create a satellite branch library in that new library and community center and to serve the South Hayward community. So we are getting ever closer to our full funding of that project, and we still have a substantial gap, but this funding will allow us to actually really move forward in earnest with phase one of the project and some of the demolition and construction and site work. So thrilled, and a big kudos to Mary Thomas in the city manager's office and Genti Adelman, our library director. Mary worked on the grant application, and Genti was instrumental in her role as president of the California Library Association last year in getting Governor Newsom to add over $400 million of these grant funds to the state budget so that we could apply. Of course, it was a very competitive process that we had to go through to get those awards, but really appreciate her statewide advocacy and her role as library director. So just outstanding work from our team all over the city organization, and just really a pleasure to be able to present all these awards this evening, and good news.
Wow, we could all use some. I think let's just have a collective cheer. Yay! From those here and those was on Zoom, yes, thank you. Good work, everybody, on all of those things. But I mean, on the last one, that is such incredibly good news about the award for the Stack Center, because that brings us a lot closer than we were, and really pretty close to closing the final gap, hopefully, and we are actually launched on we've divided the project into 2 phases, so phase 1 is underway, but that is just such good news on that project. And also just congratulations to everybody else involved in all the other awards. We have a great staff, and keep up the good work. But it's really, really a good report tonight. We're glad that we're glad to hear it. And we know, and that said, I mean, we do know there are other problems in this city, such as one anyway that was brought up tonight in public comments, and that we have, we're not saying that we're perfect, and we are continuing to strive to become so, or to get on top of some of those other things. Nevertheless, all of that was very good news that we're doing something right. With that, we are now going to move on to our action items. And as I said earlier, on consent items, were numbers 1 through 3. We are continuing items 1 and 2 to next week. So that leaves us with number 3. Is there anyone who, yes, I see. Councilmember Marquez.
Mayor, I'm happy to move consent item number 3.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. There's no further discussion. Madam City Clerk, on the motion by Councilmember Marquez, seconded by Councilmember Wahab, would you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
See.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes, and the motion carries with 7 aye votes. That brings us to item 4, which is our work session item. This item regards a review and discussion of updates to our density bonus ordinance and our compliance with state density bonus laws. So we will start on this one with a report from our Assistant City Manager, Ms. Ott, who I'm hoping is on Zoom.
Yes,
correct?
I am.
Yes,
I'm on
okay.
Zoom.
There
Good
you are.
evening, Mayor, Council members. I'm going to turn it over very quickly to Jeremy Lakirko, and our Planning Manager and Development Services. But I also want to acknowledge this has been a great collaboration between Jeremy and then Christina Morales in our Housing Division. And so I think really excited to present some of our recommendations to you tonight.
Thank you, Jen, and good evening, Mayor, Madam Mayor, and members of the council. Jeremy Lakirko, the City of Hayward, Planning Manager. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. So I think the last time that we came to the full council was back in February when we did a joint work session with the Planning Commission and the City Council, and we got a lot of really great feedback. Not only from that work session, but following a lot of outreach that we did, not only with internal stakeholders, but also with the developers. And I just wanted to kind of go through what we are proposing and some changes to our density bonus program that staff is recommending at this stage. So just a quick, by way of background, as many of you know, as we reported out in February, our existing density bonus ordinance was adopted in 2005. And many things have changed in the last 17 years, and those changes have resulted in our current ordinance not being compliant with state legislation. And so with that in mind, we were really very aggressive in trying to get any assistance we could from the state. And luckily in 2019, we were awarded a $75,000 grant from the state from HCD, the SB2 grant program to help fund our update. And that was part of that work is what channeled into and began with the first part of that outreach was to hold that joint work session that we had in February. Following that joint work session, we worked very diligently, as I said, with internal and external stakeholders to come up with what we think is going to be a really good suite and a good balanced approach to updating our density bonus ordinance. And then we came and presented a lot of those recommendations to the Homelessness and Housing Task Force in the end of June, not only to review our recommendations, but provide any feedback that they may have on some of the proposed updates. So just briefly, for purposes of members of the public, just for by way of knowledge, so the purpose and the intent of the density bonus ordinance is that we really want to make affordable housing. We want to incentivize and create additional housing opportunities. We want to make it more feasible by potentially reducing development costs, and the state has allowed that through their density bonus laws by enshrining concessions and waivers that can help provide developers those options. It also is intended to increase revenue by allowing development to be constructed at potentially a higher density than otherwise would be allowed through the underlying general plan or zoning. And also to the density bonus, at least our purpose was really to look at kind of our current process and any opportunities that we have to streamline that. So obviously updating our program provides a great opportunity to do that. So we, as I mentioned before, we went to the Planning Commission, City Council held that joint work session along with the Homelessness and Housing Task Force. And we got some pretty consistent feedback from all of those public meetings. Overwhelming support and the feedback that we received is to create an ordinance that was flexible to accommodate any future changes in state law, so we don't end up in another situation where we update our program only to find out that the state has since changed their regulations requiring our ordinance obsolete. The other thing that we wanted to do is align our density bonus approval process, and the feedback that we got was that there was general agreement that that would be a good thing to do and general support for doing that to be able to streamline that to help save time and money for applicants. There was recommendations and support to offer incentives beyond what the state law currently offers. But there was also a very mindful approach that we wanted to make sure that whatever we were creating was very thoughtful and was really intended to meet the city's housing need. And again, any way that we can help leverage some of those incentives or concessions to help make those projects feasible, that was the underlying goal. And so when you look back at all of the comments that we have and what the basis for our recommendation is this evening and what kind of went into our work, obviously feedback from all of those public meetings between the commission, the council, and the task force. We did very targeted stakeholder interviews with developers, not only for-profit, but affordable housing developers, and asking them what they would need in order to make a project feasible, or what are the challenges that they face, so we could look and reflect that when we were creating our own ordinance. We also took a really comprehensive review of other jurisdictions, and by that, we really wanted to extrapolate some of the best practices of density bonus ordinances from around the area and in the state. And that was really very, very helpful to help kind of frame kind of the conversation as we started to really dive into the details of creating our recommendations. And then, as I mentioned before, it is essential that we create an ordinance that works for our community. And so looking at the needs of our existing residents, looking at the needs and the study that was found from our displacement that was completed in 2021, and the findings from that displacement study were also very essential and paramount to our recommendations as we decided to move forward. So in terms of the ordinance itself, there's really three main components of that. The first thing that we wanted to do is really try to tailor ordinance updates to incentivize on-site affordable. And so the three items that you see here are really intended to incentivize and create additional density bonus increases for those projects that provide on-site affordable. And so the first thing is that we wanted to, across the board, for projects that do provide those on-site units, we wanted to allow them and provide them an additional 5% density bonus. And again, this could apply for projects, whether or not it could be a mixed income project, could be other projects that could be meeting housing need. The other thing that we looked at was very special target populations that I'll get to here in a minute. But there was a desire that there, in addition to just providing across the board density increases, that in a way to further incentivize meeting those special target populations, to provide an additional increase beyond that state allowance by allowing additional 10%. And then the last thing is to look at the overall number of concessions that the state currently allows and what is currently provided by the city's affordable housing ordinance, and maybe look at ways that we could sweeten the deal, so to speak, to help further offset some of the costs of building new development in Hayward to make it more feasible. And so when we talked about the special needs populations, what we're really talking about, and the feedback that we received from all of the stakeholders, is that there was a desire for our mixed income projects to help create incentives for those larger unit types. And this really came out of the displacement study, which found that there was not a great supply of larger housing stock within the community that would be dedicated for affordable. And so what could we do as a community to provide additional incentives to create those larger units that would be conducive and attractive for families? The other thing that we wanted to do, and things that we have heard over and over again in many of the desires of council, is to really promote that universal design principle, allowing our residents that are living in a space the ability to continue to age in place without having to relocate because they can't, for example, get their wheelchair through the door, or they don't have enough room to be able to be able to move or get around in their place. And so creating a very proactive approach for these mixed income projects that do in fact create universal design and incorporate that is something that was also seen as something that we should try to further incentivize. Senior housing, mixed income senior housing. Now the state allows senior housing to automatically be eligible for a density bonus, and there is no specific tie-in requirement that senior housing be affordable. But one of the things that we were trying to do is really trying to incentivize the creation of those on-site affordable senior units. And by doing that, one of the things that we did is, again, include this as part of the special target population, if in fact they're able to create those on-site affordable units. In addition to that, we looked at student housing. There's not a lot that has been developed in Hayward, but we have heard interest from various individuals and developers about what challenges that they've faced in other jurisdictions. And so we wanted to create a suite of potential density incentives that would create or further incentivize the creation of additional student housing. And then obviously there's other special needs individuals, including our foster youth, veterans, and those individuals that are currently experiencing homelessness. And so what are things that we can do to help developers who are trying to build a project to meet these populations? What can we do to make their projects slightly more feasible? And so as you saw, and it was contained in the staff report, we included a pretty good table that really compared the existing state requirement versus what our proposed density requirements were. And for the purposes of explanation, what I really want to do is highlight the areas that are in the red box. And so you can see here on the chart, by state law, existing state density bonus law, there are certain density bonus allowances for projects that provide a certain percentage of very low, low, and moderate. And they also have incentives or density bonus eligibilities for those that provide foster youth if they're restricted at very low, for college students, and including, as I mentioned before, market rate seniors. And so what we were trying to do, as I mentioned before, is add an additional 5% bump beyond the state maximum density allowance for those projects across the board that are providing these units at these affordable levels, but then go above and beyond that. And if they are not only providing those levels, but if they're helping to meet some of our target population needs, then we could further incentivize that with a slight density bonus on top of that. And so that's the chart that you see in front of you. It's really looking at what the state baseline is currently versus what the city is proposing. So in terms of a concession, we talk about concessions, we talk about incentives. Density bonus, I think most of us know that when we're talking about a density bonus, it actually it allows a developer to get additional units on top of what would otherwise be allowed. As part of the state density bonus laws, as I mentioned, the state also allows for incentives and concessions. And the purpose for that is to allow developers an opportunity to take a look at the development standards and come up with an idea or possible options that could help further reduce some of those costs for them in order to make a project work. And so what we typically have found, at least recently in Hayward, is that most of the concessions that we get are really related to development standards. They're development standards in our zoning ordinance. They're development standards that we see from design requirements. It also can be defined as an approval of a mixed use zoning district or other regulatory, which could be a cost reduction. I know many people have talked about parking. Parking oftentimes is a very easy concession that many developers request, and primarily because the cost to develop parking spaces is pretty high, and it doesn't actually translate to actual units. And so oftentimes developers will ask that for that as a potential concession. But it's not only that. We've seen concessions being requested for the amount of open space. We've seen it requested for or reduced building setbacks. And all of this, again, is intended to allow a development a little bit more feasible and more land area to be able to build units. And so when we're talking about the existing state law versus the proposed Hayward concessions, I really want to focus on, again, the area highlighted in the red box. The state currently already allows a certain number of concessions for projects that would otherwise qualify if they're providing a certain number of units at very low, or moderate. And our affordable housing ordinance, which we adopted and we are currently reviewing right now, also has certain requirements for projects that are wanting to add units. And so what we tried to do is we didn't want to necessarily provide additional incentives or concessions for those projects that come in at the bare minimum and meet our affordable housing ordinance, the minimum affordable housing ordinance requirement. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to further incentivize those projects that would otherwise be eligible for between 2 and 4 concessions to be able to go a little bit higher. And what those intent with that and the hope for that is that, again, providing an additional incentive or a concession will further incentivize and make project feasibility in the city of Hayward more enticing. That is not the only thing, though, that as we're talking about the ordinance update that we looked at. And so the other feedback that we got very specifically from our task force council in the joint work session is that we really want to make sure that we are doing what we can to streamline the density bonus process and aligning that with the highest approving body. The way that our current ordinance is written, every density bonus application automatically goes to the Planning Commission, which of course, if you have a project, a small project, that would qualify for staff level review and approval. That just adds an additional timeline and additional cost to the applicant. And so by streamlining that process, we're still maintaining the integrity of that review, but we're allowing it to be done in a slightly more expeditious way. The other thing that we wanted to do where we could, as I mentioned, is we want to really default to the state guidelines where we can. And that means referencing the existing government code sections of state density bonus law, so that if the state law changes, we're not dealing with another obsolete situation. And so creating an ordinance that defaults to the guidelines when we can, where we can, was something that we wanted to do. The other thing that we wanted to do is simplify. Our current ordinance is really hard to read. It's hard to administer. And when we're trying to talk through this with developers, unless you're a very savvy developer, it may be a little bit more challenging to understand. And so we wanted to create an ordinance that was not only easy to understand, but provided that additional flexibility. And that's kind of what we heard from all of the stakeholders, including our development interviews that we did from our developer community. And then when it's all said and done, we want to create a suite of checklists and informational handouts because we want our new program to be promoted. We want to be able to highlight all of the changes. We want to be able to incentivize and make it easier for those to understand the new regulations. And so that is kind of the next phase after ordinance adoption. And so again, as I mentioned before, what we're really hoping to do is create an ordinance that is streamlined to create a program that saves the applicant and staff time and money. We're creating a program that is flexible, that goes beyond the state, but provides developers flexibility to be able to get the concessions that they need in order to be able to make the project feasible. And then the other thing that we try to do with the ordinance recommendation is make it responsive. And by that, we're talking about responsive to the feedback that we heard from all of the task force members and planning commission, city council, and responsive to those developers that we interviewed, because we want this to really be something that they will look towards, and we want Hayward to be on their radar if they're looking to build additional housing. The other thing that we are talking about and that we're currently in the process of exploring is the idea of fee waivers, reductions, and deferrals. We don't necessarily need to codify this as part of the ordinance, but we would recommend that maybe we consider these on a case-by-case basis. And certainly if the council has a desire to do this, we can continue to work with the Public Works Division on any potential utility connection fee deferrals and the Housing Division, because it's essential that we have a process in place to ensure that we're going to get repayment for these fees. But one of the things that we heard when we did those stakeholder interviews is that the upfront costs burden to the developers is pretty substantial. And anything that they could do to help defer some of those costs until after grants have been obtained or the projects are under construction would be a great benefit. And so those are also options that we are also continuing to explore and could be further explored if the council would like us to. In terms of next steps, we are recommending that council provide us feedback on what we reported out this evening. If you have any specific additional guidance on our updated recommendation, including any specific guidance related to the incentives or the concessions. And then following this work session, we're planning to finalize that ordinance and also look at any amendments that are needed to our existing municipal code, bring that back to the Planning Commission for review and feedback, complete the necessary CEQA analysis because there is environmental assessment that needs to be completed with any municipal code change. And then what we're hoping to is pending any changes or different direction from council, we're hoping to bring a finalized ordinance back in front of the council in December. So with that, I am available for any questions. I would also say that Christina Morales, our Housing Division Manager, is here, as well as Rosalind Thompson, who's one of our senior planners who's assisting us with this effort.
Well, thank you. That was a good report and a good, actually, written report too in the staff packet. So I appreciate the work that's gone into this. So this is a work session, so I'm going to go right to the public, and we have a speaker on Zoom, Diane Castleberry, one of our AC Transit people.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Good evening, Mayor Halliday and Hayward City Council members and the public. My name is Diane Castleberry. I'm External Affairs Rep and Staff Liaison for the city for AC Transit. And I wanted to read into the record. I know that you probably received this letter, the council received this letter right before this meeting. Transit's Service Development and Planning Director, Robert Del Rosario. AC Transit has reviewed city staff's proposed adjustments to its density bonus ordinance and applauds the city's proposed approach and process used to arrive at the new rules. We believe increasing density and supporting the construction of affordable and senior housing will not only make the Bay Area a better place to live, but also lead to a virtuous cycle with more people using public transit for their daily needs. In the spirit of strengthening the link between land use and mobility, AC Transit recommends the city require any developers who receive any of the density bonuses or incentives to participate in the AC Transit Easy Pass program. The Easy Pass program is an institutional pass for schools, employers, and residential communities that provide annual AC Transit passes good on any AC Transit bus system-wide at significant discount. Requiring those who qualify for the density bonus to participate in the program will allow all residents in those developments the freedom to leave their car behind, reduce traffic congestion and emissions, and limit demand for parking in those developments. It also makes these new developments more accessible and welcoming for those who don't own cars. Linking Easy Pass participation to increase density and affordable housing really makes for good policy, and that will reduce vehicle miles traveled in and through the city and facilitate a more equitable, car-free lifestyle for its residents. We hope Hayward serves as a model for how to link increased density with transit mobility for a more livable environment. Sincerely, AC Transit. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for those comments. We have a speaker here in the chambers, David Watley.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, David Watley. So I just wanted to know if it was possible to pull up the zoning ordinance as I provide these comments. I don't know if the planning manager is able to do that or someone else from the city manager's office. I'm sorry, the density bonus ordinance. Is there a way to see it that way members of the public can take a look at it? I believe it's.
I don't know that it was on one particular.
It's Chapter 10, Article 19 of the Municipal Code. I don't know if there's a way to sort of pull up at least, because it's quite extensive from what I'm looking at, if it'd be possible to just to pull it up, the section 10-19.100-title.
Mr. Watley, I'd just go ahead with your comments, okay? Because your time is running down. So please just go ahead with your comments, okay?
Okay. Well, going ahead with my comments is I would comment that I think it would be helpful to the public if the ordinance could be seen on the screen, or at least I did not see one excerpt from the actual density bonus ordinance on any of the city planning manager's slides. So that's continuing my comments on that. Having said that, I do have some questions that from the city planning manager's presentation. And by the way, I want to thank the city planning manager for that presentation. I think that it provided some information that was helpful, and that I personally had not heard some pieces of information that was presented by the planning manager before. So thank you for that, City of Hayward planning manager. So I think that's probably, as someone who doesn't really have a planning background, I haven't really served on, I haven't served on a planning commission. So if you're kind of like me and you're kind of more like trained, like let's say in like international law, right? So planning, a city's planning ordinances aren't necessarily something that you're really familiar with. Is there a way you can sort of provide to the public a layman's sort of definition of density bonus? For example, let's say basically the idea is the law says you can only build 50 units, let's say, but we're gonna make a concession and let you build 70 units on that same parcel of land if you do XYZ.
That was pretty good. That was a pretty good short explanation of what it is. And your time is up. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you kindly. I appreciate
All
that.
right. So, next we have Ro Aguilar.
Hello, hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great, okay. I hope you all got my written comments that I sent. Did anybody get that earlier? Okay, great. So I'm just gonna highlight a few things. First of all, I want to congratulate the council and the staff on all the awards. I think that is wonderful for the city, and I think we have a capable and talented staff under the council leadership. I really admire our staff and our council. I want to get that clear before I disagree with you. Now, I don't doubt that your intent, I don't even doubt your intent to increase affordable inclusionary housing, even exceeding the state's density bonus maximum, and the thoughtful and generous array of incentives that are included in this density bonus plan. However, I do question, why is the council so hesitant when the need is so great, and the failure to act now can result in severe consequences for low-income residents falling behind, further behind financially and in their effort to acquire wealth? You know, I'm speaking about on-site, affordable, inclusionary, owner-occupied. Now, I do support rental aspect, but owner-occupied is really important to build the middle class and repair the damage done by systemic racism. If you think of it in this way, in the past, there was active government regulations preventing Black people, minorities from acquiring housing. Now that we are more enlightened, hopefully, and we have insight, it's the job of the council, the leadership, the elected officials, to reverse that and actively require developers to build inclusionary, affordable housing. That would be repairing the damage that was done by these laws that prevented them from doing that. Now I'm asking you to take action to facilitate folks who are low income to do that. Thank you very much. And
thank you. Yes. Okay. And next we have Suzanne, also on Zoom.
Hi, Mayor and council members and city staff. I'm going to be short and probably not sweet. Just listening to that, to give all this incentives and bonuses on top of incentives and not require the builders to provide parking and not dealing with the congestion that we're already dealing with now, it just feels like you are pimping out our city. You guys need to not think of just today, but in the future. I almost feel like you think, oh, in 4 years, we're all going to be gone, so it doesn't matter. This is something that really I'm against. All these bonuses and all this stuff that you're giving to these builders. I think that you need to require them to figure out parking. I mean, I own a tow company. I deal with complexes where the owners are like, everyone's parking illegally, you need to tow them. And all the owners are like, we want to park, but you created such a spot that we can't even pull into our parking garage. our own garage. I think you guys really need to rethink this, and I really think that you need to make the builders step up, not down. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak? I'm not seeing anyone else here in the chambers. I'm not seeing any raised hands among attendees. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comments, and we will go back to council, and we'll start with Council Member Zermano.
Mayor, thank you. Jeremy, thank you very much for the report. Excellent, very thorough, because it is complicated. So I have some questions. Let's see, first one, any thought that we could take into consideration Diane Castleberry's idea?
Thank you, Council Member, and thank you, Diane, for bringing that up. I mean, I think definitely we can look into that. Certainly, I think any opportunity that we have to promote multimodal and AC transit, I think is a good win for the community. And so we can continue to look into that. And we can certainly promote that as an option.
Excellent. We're also, as far as building, we're running out of places to build. So two of the better places to actually build more affordable units, which is what the plan really is all about, are the two BART properties right next to the BART stations. Are we close to convincing BART that they should build something, or that they should let us build something there?
Yeah, could I jump in? Is that okay, Jeremy? Yeah, I've just been in conversations with their TOD their TOD group, and we are in their TOD plan. So we are absolutely in their queue for looking at joint development. I think COVID kind of stopped things a little bit. They're doing some construction on the Hayward BART station, but we are working closely with them. They know we're very interested in seeing development there, and we are in their plan. There's only so many stations and developments they can do at a time, given their own staffing resources, but they're very aware that we want to work with them to see those properties developed.
Yes, the other place we can go is we can go up, and it looks like we can, or we're proposing it. Let's see, another question. The two areas there. Why not 10%? Why just 5% on the increase? Is it more expensive for us? Is it less units for us? Or is there a reason why we just went for 5%?
It's a good question. So Christina and I'll probably lean on her a little bit to help with this response, but it's a balancing act, because what you really want to do is you want to provide developers the ability to go a little bit further, build a little bit more, or get that greater level of affordability in terms of their units. And if they are able to accomplish that, then you reward them with additional concessions or additional bonus.
Okay.
And so we didn't want to blow everything out of the water. We wanted to really create a very stepped, measured approach. We thought that would be a little bit more thoughtful. And for clarification, we have not really seen a lot of projects in Hayward that have maxed out their density bonus request. What we're actually seeing, we're seeing projects coming in at the low point, at the very bare minimum, and they're asking for concessions and waivers. And so what we're trying to do is get more than just the minimum. We're trying to get to move the needle a little bit more to get more units. And the way to do that is to not to give everything at the same time, but have enough of a carrot where people will go there. Christina, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I think I have a couple things to add. One is that under the state density bonus is 100% affordable housing project is eligible for an 80% density bonus.
Okay.
So we didn't want to take away or to minimize that benefit that the 100% affordable housing projects have. And as Jeremy was saying, would like to have room to step up. So right now what we're proposing is just providing an additional bonus if they meet the existing requirements for affordable housing that the state provides. So let's say they start meeting that requirement, then we have the ability to increase the on-site affordable housing requirement and give them a little higher density bonus if we find that the strategy is successful.
All right, thank you. How close are we to requiring only on-site affordable units and increasing the number of affordable units? How close are we to that?
So we are working with a consultant that's doing the feasibility study, and we will be bringing the next iteration of the analysis. We went to the Homeless Housing Task Force in September, and we're bringing the next phase of that to the Planning Commission in early December. So we'll likely bring the conversation before the City Council in January.
Okay, so if we want to include those famous RNA numbers, we need to start thinking about increasing the number of units required. I like the target populations, but I think, why did you leave out faculty and teachers? Can we put them back? Can we include them as a target audience or target living folks? I don't know what that. Lost the term. Target
population, I think it was.
Target population.
Yeah, we can certainly look into that. I'm not quite sure that the state density bonus includes teachers, but if that's something that council, I mean, I think it gets a little bit more challenging, you know, when you're dealing with certain employees and trying to, you know, how long do they stay there, and is it you know, what happens if they don't teach anymore for a specific district or something? But Christine, I don't know if you've had any experience with that.
All right. So,
yeah, and I think one of the distinctions is that most of the target populations fall into one of the income categories as well. So and I believe, you know, many teachers would fall into these income categories. So regardless of being targeted to teachers, I don't know that we have any special developments that are specifically targeting teachers that we could then give them an additional bonus. We haven't seen any development of special teacher housing where we have seen units that are set aside for these different target populations.
Okay. So just explore that with Chabot and Cal State Hayward EB, please. Also, why are we promoting decreasing commercial space and open space? I always thought that we wanted to have a healthy amount of that. Can you kind of explain that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so the earlier discussions that we had with, and one of the earlier options that we talked about with council and the planning commission and the task force was the idea of maybe we look at some of those challenges that the developers are currently facing. And one of the things that they brought up was the requirement of affordable housing for some of these mixed income projects. In talking with them and talking internally with staff, we thought that maybe a better approach was not to be so prescriptive, to allow the developer the opportunity, as with any density bonus application, when they are requesting a concession or a waiver, they have to provide some sort of baseline analysis that demonstrates that the concession and the waiver is needed to make the project feasible. And so we did kind of reevaluate that, and certainly, you know, if that's something that they specifically need, then we would be asking for some supporting information that would demonstrate that. Jenna,
yeah, I just wanted to clarify, we're not encouraging that. It's just that when a developer comes in for a concession, they can ask for some of those changes. So we're not encouraging it. We certainly aren't going to promote that. But sometimes by reducing the amount of retail space or commercial space or shortening the height of that, sometimes they can fit more units, and that can have an economic impact on their ability to build the housing. Now, in exchange, they would have to provide on-site affordable housing and meet our requirements. So we get something in exchange for that. But I just want to be clear, we're not incentivizing that. It's just that would be part of the development standards that they might be able to ask for a concession on.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better, because rhetorically speaking, we really don't want a 5-6 unit 6th-floor tower without any retail space down at the bottom. So, and my last question is, let's see, I believe I read that the state of California is easing the parking requirements if a project is close to public transportation. How does that affect what you are proposing? Did you take that into account?
Well, it doesn't really affect that, because, as I mentioned before, our baseline is compliance with the state law. And so we're going to, you know, if the state changes their ordinance or changes their density bonus laws, by updating our ordinance to refer to the government sections where we can, I think will ensure that we remain compliant. Currently, the state allows certain projects that are BART proximate or transit proximate with major transit stops the ability to have reduced parking. And so that's already an option that developers have. We are not, and our proposal would not, and our recommendations would not change that. What we are not specifically doing is we're not specifically identifying those pre-incentives or pre-concessions that we were previously talking about. We thought if we just leave it more broadly, then certainly as case by case basis, as development is needed, our concessions are needed, we can evaluate those at that point. But all of the recommendations that we have really right now are intended to increase density, the number of units, as well as maybe offer additional financial incentives, but it's not intended to further reduce parking in transit or otherwise.
Okay. And let's see, you didn't mention anything about trees, so thank you for not decreasing the number of trees required. And I'll have a couple of comments later, Mayor, so thank you very much.
This is a work session, so go ahead and make your comments.
Then in that case, my questions are through, and I like everything that is being proposed. I do. Except for excluding faculty and teachers, decreasing the open space and the commercial space, but you explained that, so that's no problem. I can live with it. The idea of actually increasing the projects, my only worry was, as in my question was, where are we going to place all these folks? We're running out of infill projects, so it's close to BART. Let's see. Okay, and that really is it. I like what has been done, so I like it, and I hope all my colleagues like the same thing. I'm not that really worried about parking per se, simply because some of these projects will be close to public transportation, and if we take into account AC Transit, I think it's a good one. So thank you again. Good project. Good job.
Thank you. You will go next to Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jeremy, for the presentation. Can you elaborate on the inclusion of universal design? How do you envision that going into effect?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we have Rincon, who is one of our environmental on-call consultants that are going to be looking into this idea a little bit more. It seemed to have pretty broad support, but there's not a lot of other cities that have specifically identified incentives for universal design, specifically tied to the density bonus. And so we're going to need to be a little bit creative, and I think we can probably do that. The other thing that I just wanted to kind of put out there for the council is that in our general plan is one of the works implementation items. There was the program update to actually develop a universal design ordinance. And so our thought is that at some point we could just have something included for our density bonus as a placeholder. And then if we need to update that when we actually adopt a full-blown ordinance that would apply citywide, that would be a great opportunity to do that. So I think we're going to need a little bit more work to figure out the details. But I think the way that we're envisioning that is that projects, there are multiple opportunities or multiple options that developers could incorporate that would meet universal design. And so what we want to do in terms of codifying that in our ordinance is have some very specific kind of guidelines. So that way applicants know when they're coming to the city what would qualify them for that additional increase.
Okay, thank you for including that. I know myself and Councilmember Lamnin had been strong advocates of that concept since our planning commission days back in, I think, 2009. So any support you need from us, I want us to be creative. And if we can be one of the cities to apply this to the density bonus in addition, sorry, I'm not feeling too well. So I got a really bad headache, so I apologize. But what I was saying is applying it to the density bonus ordinance in addition to a citywide universal design ordinance. I hope that we can lead on that and willing to provide any support to make that happen. I think it's also aligned with our climate goals. You know, I see this as a sustainability issue. If you could have something built that can be sustainable for you to age in place, then, you know, we're not using the greenhouse emissions and products, and we're not being as wasteful. So hopefully we could figure out creative ways to tie that in. I'm in support of staff's recommendations. I really like the flexibility. I appreciate the survey to the developers as well as nonprofit developers, just to get their expansive responses. Really appreciate the level of engagement. Also, my colleagues work on the homeless and housing task force. And I do want to see that additional bonus for the targeted populations. I think it's important that we look at the most recent point in time survey and see what the need is in Hayward and be able to match that and continue to track arena numbers to see where we're missing and try to hit those numbers as much as we possibly can. So I do feel that with this flexibility, we'll be able to encourage people to do more on site, which is the ultimate goal. So I'm in support of that. Also, along with these conversations, since housing is such an important need for all of our community members, also want us to just make sure that we are consistent with, once these ordinances are in place, just the outreach efforts, and once these projects are online, making sure that there's consistent communication and ensuring that the public is aware of these opportunities. And along those lines, do we have a nonprofit agency or any type of registry within the city of Hayward that kind of keeps a list of members that we are aware of that are in need of housing? Does anything like that exist? I'm just curious. No.
I don't know if Christina has, we do have a list of a lot of the community organizations and nonprofits that we have partnered with. That started years ago when we were getting everyone together to promote the census. And I know that our city manager's office and their team has been working in conjunction with our communication officer to develop that list. In terms of housing, I don't know, Christina, do we have a
Jeremy, you froze, or I'm not sure if my screen froze.
This is Jennifer. He's not frozen for me. Can you hear me? Oh.
I think
Mayor, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I can hear you. I think Councilmember Marquez should turn off her video. It may help with her bandwidth.
Yeah, because I think she.
I'm frozen. I was frozen. Okay, I didn't hear anything Jeremy said other than there was a list of nonprofit providers. Really, what I guess my ask is just if that's something we could maybe talk to a nonprofit provider. I just want to make sure that we're doing the best we can to ensure that this information is being shared with the public. I know it's kind of getting ahead of the issue, but just it's part of the conversation in terms of housing. And then when will this be adopted? What's the timeline?
The timeline right now, we're envisioning that we will be back before the city council at their meeting on December 6th. That's the tentative date that we have scheduled right now.
And then is there any discussion about projects in the pipeline that they're going to be grandfathered in, or will they be subject to the changes? What's that discussion?
Currently, I don't know that we have any active density bonus projects that are currently under review in terms of density bonus applications. We do have one that is pending. And I know that applicant would be very interested in a streamlined process. And so I think I think that kind of aligns with what the feedback that we heard from the council the last time we were here. So we will continue to work with them, and any way that we can get this accomplished sooner than later, I think we would all appreciate that as well.
Okay, and my last question is, once this is adopted, would this be fall in line with our online permitting process? Would this also fall under that, or would it be a separate track?
It would be, and so that's the timing of this is really good because as we're working with our EnerGov launch, which you know is coming soon to the permit center near you, we are also looking at all of the application types, and certainly. This is one of those application types that we could streamline and update as we need to, as the ordinance gets adopted and expedite that process.
Okay, those are all my questions and feedback. Thank you so much to everyone who worked on this and all the public comments as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all who were part of this presentation. And I just wanted to get more information about a couple of items. So, as you know, I've said a lot in the past. I was interested to see what can we do to get to the 20% inclusionary housing. I'm sure you all had bets on when I was going to say that, but just wanted to see, like, when you come back with the findings in January, can we just put on a slide, these are the barriers to getting the 20% housing? Because I know that was a really important number for folks, and I've seen it in plenty of documents for other cities, and I just want to know what's holding us back here in Hayward. And so just wanted to know if we could just have that as a slide. I don't want to concede on it, but I just want to give you all some cover in case, we come back on that percentage. If that's possible. I don't know if the developers or nonprofits have spoken specifically about that percentage and why it may or may not work.
Yeah, and we have hired an economic consultant, so they have actually done detailed feasibility analysis. So we are going to walk through all of that analysis and talk about barriers and in terms of costs and other things. So we will have a very detailed presentation for that, because we know how important this issue is to the entire council and community. And we've tried to be really careful about making sure whatever we do balances increasing affordable housing, but doesn't disincentivize housing production overall. So
awesome.
Yeah,
that would be great. And then I am very excited of hearing about the possibility of using easy transit passes, and wanted to know if it's just something that, I don't know if we can require it, but can it just be like a checklist as part of the conditions of approval?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Already, did I miss that in part of our conditions of approval? Because I don't think I see it normally added on later.
Yeah, I think we are very supportive of supporting AC Transit. Our residents are big riders. I think what we're trying to figure out is we'll need to go back and look as whether or not the density bonus is where that should reside, or are there other ordinances, or are there other ways that we can build that relationship. We're just not sure the density bonus is where that should be, but let us go back, look at it, explore some different options. And when we come back, we'll come back with a response on that.
And can we also think about adding like Clipper card and as another?
Well, and I think that's why we're a little hesitant to do only easy passes, because it could be that certain developments near BART, a Clipper card makes more sense, or it could be that if you're along an AC Transit line that isn't near BART, then easy passes are and so I think we're a little hesitant to go all in with easy passes for every single project. I still think, we would love that in an ideal world. And we want to support our partner at AC Transit, but let us go back, look at it. We also have some TDM measures that we need to do as part of some of our other development regulations. So let us take a look. I'm just not sure. I just want to be honest. I'm not sure we think that density bonus is where that should be, but we don't have a problem trying to incentivize easy passes and developments. So let us go back and try to come up with some options.
Okay. And I wanted to thank Council Member Zermania for mentioning teacher housing and looking at that. And now I understand more the reasons why I've heard some of that in the past. I'm just curious, though, if we could take some information that is available on how San Francisco Unified was able to do teacher housing, and if there's any lessons learned and how they were able to do it. I understand there might be some issues with whether they keep those positions and, percentages, but just wanted to see if that was something we can look at as a case study.
Yeah, and I've worked on a project that didn't actually get implemented, but kind of was in conception related to this. And the school district has to participate. And by the school district participating and using certain types of public financing, you're able to create teacher housing. So, but what I'm thinking is maybe there's a way that in those instances where it's teacher housing through the school district, let us take a look and see what we could do. I don't know that, again, whether or not density bonus is where that should reside, but let us look at it. But certainly we're supportive of the school district and trying to work with them to see if there's a model out there that could work for them.
Okay. And I know I have to be careful with mentioning this other idea because my mama is watching, but mother-in-law units. I know they're pretty popular in San Francisco. I love you, Mom. She lives with me. But just curious, like if there is some kind of density bonus on the lockout ADUs or mother-in-law units that we can increase more, because obviously it can be for, renting to students as well. So I don't know if that's something that's possible. Like if you do a lockout ADU kind of thing. There was a project that had it and it looked great, and I wanted to incentivize that more.
We did talk about ADUs, and I think one of the biggest challenges to incentivizing ADUs, even though I think it's great, and I think we've seen a really huge community response to wanting to build more ADUs, is as it ties into the density bonus provision and it being deed restricted.
Okay.
Many of the ADUs are owner occupied; they're part of a single family development. And that gets challenging. A lot of homeowners don't want to be deed restricted to have their unit be rented out. So that it creates a little challenging. It's a little challenging. But if somebody's coming in and they are proposing to a project that includes that as a way to meet their affordable housing, we can certainly work with the housing division and see how if that would qualify for density bonus.
And I'm not talking about like the separate building ADUs, just more of it's a bedroom, but it has like a locked door that they don't have to enter the whole house, and they still have a little kitchenette. So just wanted to see if that was possible. And then I am concerned about parking, even though I'm a fan of hearing about the passes. I agree with one of our callers about parking being an issue. So even with these incentives for the lockout ADUs, I do think we need to find the balance of making sure the community is not heavily impacted by the density, because we don't have the amenities and everyone needs a car, unfortunately, in certain areas. And so I just really am concerned about if we relax some parking, and I definitely for reducing greenhouse gases. I feel like cars are getting more efficient or electric in the future. We have to figure out a balance, because there are a lot of cars on the street, and just want to see if there's some way we could figure out something, whether it's a development where they have, a separate little parking lot. I've seen some of the projects where they have a separate little parking lot, just like in a corner of the development. Just to have some overflow if we are going to, do some of the density that we're seeing in certain projects. I feel like there needs to be some kind of balance with that. And then one other thing I was thinking, commercial. I know I always tend to pop off about commercial at the bottom, residential at the top, and I think it's a great idea. Some parts of Hayward, it is not working out, but can we incentivize co-working spaces that are in that development? And I know that we can have a range of commercial, but actually saying co-working spaces where there's someone that's going to be working that front desk. There's, a couple of stations you can plug into. You can get a cup of coffee, something like that, where it actually would reduce some of the transportation issues, because they'll be able to get that separation from home and have that office at the bottom, versus just hoping that some kind of commercial, project will come along in this huge unit of a building. So is that even possible to do that?
And are you, just to clarify, are you saying for the density bonus, or are
like
you...
if you can figure out, if you attract a co-working operator, or you have that built into your project some kind of way, you can get, this percentage. Is that possible to do something like that?
I mean, I guess the intent of the density, and Christina and Jeremy can jump in here too, is to try to incentivize affordable housing. So, I mean, I guess there might be a way to do that. I mean, one thing we might look at is just whether or not making sure that our zoning allows for that flexibility for those uses on the ground floor, and making sure that we're not doing anything to preclude that, because it's a great way, like you're saying, is to, with people working from home more, having a space down below. And so maybe that's a way to get some of those ground floor spaces activated. So I think I think what we understand your intent, and I think it's a great idea. And so I don't know, Jeremy or Christina, in terms of density bonus being the right vehicle, do you guys have some other comments on that?
I think Christina, I'll let you chime in here as well. I think what I was just going to say is I think, the zoning ordinance allows for those kind of uses. And I certainly think, we are as a community, as in response to the pandemic, we've had to be a little bit more creative with trying to fill a lot of these vacancies that happened because businesses unfortunately could not make it to go with it. And so we're seeing, more of these WeWork spaces where you have kind of collective areas where people can come in and join. And that is the kind of uses that we would typically allow. It's, the purpose of the density bonus is really skewed toward housing. It's not really skewed toward commercial spaces or anything like that. And so I think, and if we're able to provide that affordable housing, but I definitely think, having a, an ordinance or at least, that would allow for that. And I think we would be very supportive of that with zoning. I think we have a lot of areas in town that could accommodate that use. Not necessarily in the density bonus as it relates to affordable housing, but it is something that we could continue to support. Christina, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I have to add is, as Jeremy said, the special target populations we're listing are trying to address a specific housing need, whether units are too small for the large household sizes that we have in Hayward, or we don't have enough units with universal design. So people who have different housing needs, they can't, or they need to age in place, don't have access to it. So we were trying to focus on those specific housing needs to give them an additional bonus. So if we think about adding something like the commercial space, it's a great idea, and I think it would be a great use, especially for people who live in the building. It would become a trade-off then for the other housing needs that we want to incentivize. So if you have something that's non-housing and potentially lower cost than some of the other things we're incentivizing, it may disincentivize addressing some of those housing needs. So we thinking about all the different things that we could incentivize, really trying to focus on what the housing needs are of Hayward.
Okay. All right. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. Okay, so I had a couple things, and I know that we went over this in the housing task force, but I kind of want to bring it back. So to our assistant city manager, Ott, as well as to Ms. Morales. I think the parking thing is the biggest concern I have. I think that many residents complain about parking. As a person the only person on council that lives in a multifamily complex, parking is the biggest concern of my neighbors as well. The number one selling truck in America, and I've said this a million times now, is still the Ford F-150 pickup truck. And granted, the state's mandate of, EV vehicles have to be kind of the thing of the future. We do not have that infrastructure in place specifically to multifamily complexes, right? And so when we talk about density bonuses, we're looking really to put a lot of people in a cramped, lot. So I do think parking is a huge concern. We've heard it from roughly 3 other council members. We need to talk about parking, right? And I really agree with our caller, Suzanne, the fact that she owns a towing truck company. And I will say, when cars get towed in my complex, that's about $500 per night. These are working class family folks. It is way too expensive. It happens twice. You can't even park on the street because, your car gets broken into. All right. So parking costs a lot for regular everyday residents. And when we're talking about transit-oriented development, it's a little bit of a joke to me because of the fact that when we keep saying people are going to use BART and people are going to use AC Transit, if I remember correctly, about a year and a half ago, AC Transit wanted to cut 7 Hayward lines, right? And this is a relatively lower income community compared to some of our neighbors in the area. They wanted to cut 7 lines. And, then how would people go to work or do whatever? So these are not realistic things that we're relying on. The infrastructure is not there. We do need to ensure that there is adequate parking. So I'm just going to state that very much factually. All the stats prove it, and we're not going to be there in 10 years from now either, right? And I see you unmuted yourself, so go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we are part of our residential design study work that we're doing. It includes a parking analysis and looking at our parking standards, So that is something that we actually added to that scope because we knew and have heard the council say this is a priority for them. So that is something that's going to be studied. We're going to be looking at our standards and whether or not those need to be changed throughout the city. I mean, the state is somewhat precluding us in certain areas that we're not going to have control over, but I just wanted you to know that we are doing that work as part of that other study.
Perfect. And I do appreciate it because I think Suzanne's absolutely right. You know, one of my biggest concerns is I do believe developers make a ridiculous amount of money and they could afford to put several parking spots there and it's literally just cement, right? I know you guys have always told me it costs more and this and that, but at the end of the day, it's a one-time cost. Right, compared to what our residents are going to be facing, right? Whether it's ticketing, citations, towing fees, things like that, we're harming the community if we do not create some parking spaces that are adequate. Part two, I did want to focus on, you know, I've said this a million times as well, our senior homeless population is expected to triple within the next decade. That was a think tank stat that came out. It is really alarming because as our seniors still have, you know, whether it's Social Security, veterans assistant, disability, whatever the case may be, they cannot afford housing. And Hayward is still one of the few affordable cities. And developers do want to develop here. It's prime location, it's middle of the bay. So I do believe we need to put pressure on developers. But I also want to, if we are going to be talking about communities, I think teachers, of course, deserve housing. A lot of the colleges have land that is not being utilized. You know, it's a nice, you know, field, if you will. But if we can kind of put some pressure there. But one of the populations I am deeply concerned about is our growing senior population. And as much as we talk about people aging in place, they should be able to afford rents on fixed incomes, right? And then I wanted to ask Ms. Morales this because this is, I saw this happen somewhere else and I just wanted to see if we could do this. Since we have a rent control policy, a rent stabilization policy that is only for pre-1979 buildings, right, developments because of Costa-Hawkins, are we able to scrap our rent control policy and redo it and bring everything from 1995 and up?
I would probably defer that question to the city attorney's office, but I would suspect that since we did repeal and replace the last version of the rent stabilization ordinance in 2019, I don't believe that we could revert, just say we never had one, therefore this new construction of 1995 applies.
Okay, so if I can personally get an answer to that, right? Even if we don't bring it to the full council, I think that's important. Just because, again, you know, it literally from the 1,000 to 10,000 units that we protected did help a lot of people, right? So I really want to commend you guys on that and see if we can get a real answer on that. And then as far as the density piece. I still think that, you know, number one, we do need more on-site affordable housing in continuous, you know, longevity of that, deed restricted. And then the ADU situation that was brought up, we don't have any control over the rents over ADUs, right? Or over who they're renting it out to or how they're using. That's the last conversation I remember having about ADUs in Hayward.
Right, that was one of the challenges, is that oftentimes, yeah, unless it's a rental ADU or unless it's the homeowner wants to actually rent out their ADU, it can become very challenging. But when you include it as part of, in order to meet the affordable housing requirements, then you're actually asking a landowner to deed restrict their own property.
Okay, so I will say that if we are waiving any fees, anything extra on beyond that, you know, 750 square feet, right? Let's say if it's 800 square feet because of state law being at 750, if we are, let's say, offering any type of incentive, any concession, any package like that, that we would have to require it at affordable rents. I just want to say that that's something that we should, you know, take a look at as more and more people are looking into ADUs and so forth. And then the density bonuses, do you believe that this is a fair I know you guys have stated this. This is a fair compromise, if you will. I still feel like developers can give more than we tend to give a lot more to developers than they give to us.
I think, we are, number one, we don't really have a choice but to update our ordinance. And the question is really how, and I think the overarching message that we heard is that we wanted to go above and beyond. That the direction that we got from council is that we need to be a little bit more creative in producing affordable housing on site. And so that's what I think we were trying to do here with this draft. Christina will probably get into examples of what other jurisdictions have done and what has worked for them. But I think probably at the point when we're updating the affordable housing ordinance. But I think for density bonus, I think this is really a good measure. I think, we are producing affordable housing. We are getting those density bonus applications. Many jurisdictions aren't, and we are very fortunate. It may not be at the pace that we want, but anything that we can do, I think, to further incentivize that is going to help. And then, of course, as we know, the state constantly is changing, their regulations. And so again, there may be some additional guidance that the state has. And so I think what we're recommending is a really balanced approach. Some may not think it goes far enough, but I think for the city, especially knowing the applications that we received in the past, I think it really does try to get us over just the bare minimum, which has been what we've been seeing with our applications and projects lately.
And I want to highlight this. I have consistently said that, I always give the example, San Francisco's affordability percentage, right, is roughly about 30% on certain projects, 20% in general. I think that we can be a little bit more aggressive. And the reason why I say that in Hayward is because Hayward is getting gentrified. Whether, we want to admit it or not, the demographics are changing, the population is changing. And I think it's important to ensure that we create as many affordable units as possible to retain the residents, protect the residents that we have, especially our aging residents. So I would just like to highlight that as much as possible. And we really are in a position to really call out the terms. And the reason for that is, again, our location and the fact that people from the South Bay, as well as the San Francisco/Oakland area, are trying to come in here before they move out to a Tracy Mountain House, Fresno area, right? So I want us to be able to, with the limited land that we have, and then be a little bit more aggressive in our negotiation with developers, because again, they do make a significant chunk of money. And then as far as height requirements, have we talked about heights? Because I know our residents are going to be upset if, we're constantly building and building. Are we going to create like a standard that this is what we're looking at, whether it's 3 stories, 5 stories? Density is one thing, but I just want to talk about like the aesthetics in the neighborhoods too.
Yeah, so good question. The existing state density bonus laws allow additional height increases for projects by right, projects that are located within a half mile of a major transit. And what that basically means is that it doesn't necessarily, they're allowed, if it's 100% affordable, they're allowed to go up to 3 additional stories and unlimited density, that however many units can fit into those 3 stories. And so there are certain state provisions that do allow for projects, again, if they're depending on the kind of project. We haven't seen those requests. We haven't seen any specific requests for additional height for projects in Hayward. But, as any development regulation, if that seems to be an impediment, the applicant can certainly request that. So.
Okay. I think this is all of my comments. I do want to stress the affordability, the parking, and then, potentially an answer to our rent piece of it. But the problem that we're also seeing is that many of these units being created or rental, they are not home ownership opportunities. Even the developments that we think would look more like a home ownership, it is becoming rental, right? Which is also a problem because now we're making this kind of like a renter state without anybody being able to truly stay here for a longer period of time, build equity, build, familial wealth. So I just want to highlight those things. I don't want to see it go into that direction, if you will. So just thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I don't see any other council members wanting to comment at the moment.
Yeah, I have my hand up.
Huh. Really? Okay, go ahead. There you are. Yes, I see now. You have your hand up. Sorry, Councilmember Salinas.
I waited. Thank you, staff. I appreciate it. This is a great report, and I'm just impressed. As always, you guys have a way of just really whittling it down to some, 3 main principles or 3 main areas that I think have been really good. So I appreciate it. So thank you. I just have a couple of comments around concessions and the public transportation, and the public transportation requirements or elements that we want to include. We've done that to past projects. I mean, we've done that with Maple, Maine. We've done that. Lincoln Landing. I think there's these programs are embedded in these developments, and so I guess the question I have is, these density bonuses or the any one of these programs that a developer can participate in, we still have the flexibility to include these in their permits, right? Or, when we approve these projects, we can require these, right?
That is absolutely correct. And that is the case for many projects and they were required to do TDM measures or BART passes or AC transit passes because they were years ago, because they were causing too many trips, and they had to mitigate some of that trip generation by offsetting the demand by offering these passes. But now, with the new state guidelines related to, VMT, we still see that. And we see it because, especially in urban areas, it's just good practice. And so a lot of developers, whether they are, whether it's a density bonus application or not, I think, anywhere where we can further try to promote, multimodal and using these passes, I think we can certainly do that. And to your point, council member, if there was a condition of approval that certain that a body wanted to make pertaining to that to mitigate some of the issues, and we certainly could look at that as well.
Yeah. So with that said, and I was, as I was reading through staff's recommendation, I got the feeling, and I'm not going to cite, verse and paragraph, but there's what I like about this is that there is a great deal of flexibility. I mean, the Planning Commission and the council, we still have a lot of flexibility to require such elements to a development, right? I just want to be very clear about that.
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So, keeping with public transportation, I have to totally agree with, AC Transit. And the thing is this, but I think there's a much bigger problem, just, looking at developments and even having experiences with past developments. I think the big overarching issue that we're constantly being, faced with is, if we approve or when we approve a transit-oriented development, that it gets built as a transit-oriented development. But in addition to that, whether they're rental units or whether they're on-site for home ownership, that those units get sold. It has to be packaged and marketed and advertised that this is a transit-oriented development, and I keep thinking about I guess it is the Cannery project, the development right off of West Winton. When we approved that, I remember that it was, we were talking about it being, sort of the next best thing is to, the greatest thing since sliced bread when, because it was a transit-oriented development and it was going to be, one car garage or I forget what the size of the garage was, but, it was for the commuter who was living close to transportation or in a transportation hub. But yet, neighbors began to, raise issues around parking, because you had people who still had 4 cars or 3 cars and, they couldn't park in the street and they had to park far away and they had to park on Alice or whatever. And I remember there was one particular caller, there was one particular person who, she raised the issue so much that we even asked her. I remember the meeting where we asked her. He said, did you know that you were buying into a transit-oriented development? And she goes, I didn't know. My neighbors don't know. Like, it's like being, when they bought it, it wasn't sold to them as a transit-oriented development. It wasn't sold to them as sort of this, this particular type of housing development or housing unit. So anyways, and not to belabor the point, but my point is that we can talk about all of these programs and, and elements when we approve these developments. But I think the bigger issue is that when we approve these developments, we have to make sure that they get, marketed and promoted as transit-oriented developments. And so anyways, those are the, and then we could resolve issues like parking, right? we can resolve some of these issues. The second, the second comment I want to make is the concessions. And I was trying to listen to some of the themes that were coming up, and I did hear concessions around open space and concessions around commercial, and I did hear, and I know Councilmember Andrews and I have talked about this before about having requirement of commercial ground level building on second level above, but yet the commercial remains empty, right? And I mean, I can drive by drive up Mission Boulevard right now all the way out to Fremont, and that's what you see. You see a lot of ground level vacant buildings, right? Or vacant ground level shells. But I'm still convinced. I don't want to, I still feel that, that I don't want to let that go, which brings back the flexibility in this. And I guess I want the people that are watching this, that we still have a lot of flexibility and we can still require things. But, I just want to raise the caution flag around, making concessions around open space. The higher the density, the less open, the less space people are going to have to, go out, recreate, and, walk their dog or take walks and be outdoors. And so my concern is that, I don't want to, start increasing density and then at the expense of open space. And so I just want us to be, I just want us to be mindful of that. And I know we are, but I just wanted to say it out loud so that it's, said out loud. Conversely, with commercial space, I still don't want to let go of commercial space, because once we let it go, it's gone, it's gone forever. And so I'm just very concerned about, I don't want giving up our commercial space to be sort of an easy concession. And I'll just say it that. And I know it's not, I know you guys aren't going to do that, but I just want to be careful on how we proceed with that. And those are the things I'll be looking at. Lastly, the special, really targeting, special populations or, very specific populations actually. And I think that's great. As we were talking about it and as I was listening, I couldn't help but to think about, when we talk about workforce housing or even, housing for faculty, and I know it was brought up earlier about, the San Francisco model, they built housing for teachers and so forth. Hopefully, hopefully the school district still knows, and hopefully they still realize that there's still a lot of land. The school district has a lot of land that they can build workforce housing. They can build faculty housing. I mean, look at some of these properties that some of these schools are currently sitting on. They're big. They're large swaths of land that I think they could utilize, and to meet some of their, workforce housing demands. And so, but anyways, I think the goal that we're trying to achieve here is good, and which is, and I absolutely don't mind giving concessions to that or even, rewarding that. So that's good. So my last point will be this: is I just really appreciate the flexibility, and I appreciate that we're not codifying this so much so that we're the planning commission, the council isn't relinquishing our ability to require very specific things that as a community we've been valuing over the years. So that's it. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Lamnon.
Thank you. Just a very quick appreciation for the thoughtfulness, the best practices influence of this design, and also the strategy in thinking through with a lot, staff has a lot of plans on your plate right now, and really being strategic about which plans accomplish which goals that the council's articulated, that the community's articulated. So really appreciate all of the work. The one thing I wanted to add to the conversation was I do support looking at the fee waiver deferrals components of the incentive package to see what flexibility can happen. Better financing for the project is one way to get affordability by design. So I appreciate taking a look at that. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. This has been a really good discussion, and I'll just add my comments here. Councilmember Salinas, first of all, it isn't, the state is the one that's taking some of those, those options away from us. Not we ourselves are, talking about perhaps, codifying them here, but, really we're already very limited by what the state has already done. And I'll just remind everybody that's what we're doing here. We're amending our density bonus to be consistent with what the state is now requiring. And I give, staff a lot of credit for the thoughtfulness that went into this and how can we make it even better. And we know, we know that we are a city that does support housing, although as we saw from public comments, we have some differing opinions about that. But we've certainly done a lot to provide housing in this city and to increase densities throughout the community. And everybody can see it. And that has brought some challenges. Traffic and parking are big. We know what we're trying to do is design a community that ultimately will allow people to live without a car, to live well without a car, to get around to the places they need to go, to have them in their own neighborhood. Walking to the corner store is a little bit of exercise. So, you can't just wave a magic wand, and this is a project by project thing. So what we're doing here hopefully is going to give staff some additional tools to work with to get the housing, to get the additional housing we know we need without, without creating unlivable communities. And we want livable communities. So on the commercial aspect, and I agree, I do not want to give up our ability to require mixed use, to require ground floor commercial, and also open space is good, but open space, I think there's a lot more flexibility there because people recreate in different ways, and I think that ties into commercial. So I've talked, you've heard me before, about daycare is a real need. those spaces could be, if they can't be coffee shops or, other, or even, convenience stores, they can be, they could be daycare centers. We're needing that. We see the need for that more quality child care, and hopefully we'll get some help in funding that through the state and the federal governments. Gyms, now, I think the big thing is that we have some, the La Vista Park is coming along. That's going to be a beautiful, huge recreation space for people, and we have other parks throughout the city that provide bigger spaces for recreation. But a lot of people now get their exercise through going to the gym, so that's another possibility. And I think what Councilmember Wahab mentioned about it was Councilmember Andrews, I believe. Yes, the workspaces, that's another possibility for asking people to activate those ground floor spaces. But I would like to minimize what we're giving up there. I really, and we know we've had problems with getting it, but if we're going to have livable communities, people and higher densities, people need to have a livable community. They need to have that neighborhood serving commercial development. And so we need to be really careful about that. We also should be very careful about delay. And I know our fees can be a barrier, but to wait until the houses are built and they're ready to get their occupancy permits and then say, but you haven't paid your utility fees. I think, we don't want to see houses standing empty because the developer now can't pay those fees. And we've had some problems come up in that regard already, even without this. So I would be very careful about too much flexibility there. The discussion, and I appreciate Diane Castleberry coming and making that comment, the discussion about transit passes was very good. I think, I'm not sure what an AC Transit Easy Pass is compared to like a Clipper card, which does cover BART and AC Transit and Muni, and if you're going into San Francisco. So, and I'm not even sure what else, but Clipper cards are good. But as I think it was Councilmember Salinas pointed out, we have actually used that tool in some of the developments we've already built. So I think that is a good idea. I think the idea of unbundling parking is one we really, I don't see that in here. I don't see that we've really, we've gotten it on a couple of projects, and I'm not even sure how well it's worked. It might be a good idea to look at that. But people who want to have their own car, maybe they do need to pay for that parking space if they want it. And in order to not inundate the existing neighborhoods around this new development, we are probably going to have to really promote our neighborhood parking permit program so that the people who are moving into these, higher density housing units that don't have as much parking as they happen to want for their unit are not going to impact the neighborhoods around them that already exist, and we'll just have to do something else. But so that, I think that we have that program, and we should really promote it when we think we're going to have a problem. And then finally, I think on the targeting certain, populations. Well, seniors, and I noticed you didn't add in more concessions or incentives in situations where a senior project was market rate. I got that right? Yeah. Just in the ones that were targeted for low-income seniors, because a lot of seniors actually, because they were able to buy into, I'll count myself among that, buying into the housing market 35, 40 years ago, gives you an asset now that makes you better off than young people just starting families are in. And so I think that was the right way to go on that one. A lot of seniors do have assets, but and that's not to say that there aren't others that don't, but that's why we need the affordable senior housing projects too. And I would certainly agree with with giving more flexibility to those, but I do agree with the decision not to. And teachers, I think in general, teachers would be able to, if they're meeting those income standards. And I think, sadly, teachers' salaries ought to be higher, but they aren't. So they may be able, depending on the size of their family unit, to, avail themselves of some of those. And I think that is pretty much it for my comments, but I hope that you got something out of this and you can bring it back to us in the time frame that you said, and we will all be very happy with it, hopefully. So thank you for the work that's been put into this. Thank you, Council, for all the comments, because I think there were a lot of good ones. And with that, we will move on to the next item and look forward to returning to this one. And when did you say? December, early December?
Early December 6th right now.
December 6th, okay. Stay tuned. With that, we're going to move on to item number 5, which is, happily following along the last item. We are now going to adopt a resolution approving allocation of the California State Department of Housing and Community Development Local Housing Trust Fund Grant Award to Mission Paradise, a housing project in the amount of $1,150,000, and also doing the same for the Parcel Group 8 Affordable Housing in the amount of $2,645,161. So with that, I will refer this is very, very complicated subject and staff report, but I'm sure that Assistant City Manager Ott and Ms. Morales and the other staff who may be commenting on this will do a great job of explaining it to us. So I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks. I'm going to turn it over very quickly to Housing Manager Morales to walk you through this with you.
Good evening, everyone. Give me a moment while I share screen and hopefully share the right screen. Okay. All right. So the item before you tonight is an allocation of funds that have been awarded to the city from the California Department of Housing and Community Development Local Housing Trust Funds. And we'll try to simplify this as much as we can and try to get through this information quickly. I'd like to thank my staff, specifically Doris Tang, for putting together the information for us on this item today. And then just to give you kind of an overview, a big picture look at what we're trying to accomplish tonight is we're trying to hold a public hearing to fulfill the state's requirements. But basically, we're reaffirming the local housing trust fund allocations that we identified when we applied for funds from the state. So as we go over the timeline, I'll show you where the projects we're proposing to fund our existing city projects that are getting closer, one of them very close to starting construction, and we've been working with the projects for a while. So on that note, we had our first notice of funding availability in October of 2018, in which we awarded funds to Mission Paradise. We've also been working with the other project that we're proposing to fund the Parcel Group 8 projects with RCD. We entered into an exclusive negotiating rights agreement with them in September of 2020. So when we were looking at the funds we had available to award to projects from our Inclusionary Housing Trust Fund, in order to accelerate the development of these projects, we decided to look at our existing projects that needed funding, and we awarded both of these projects additional funds in May of 2021. And then when we saw the application for the local housing trust funds, we identified that as part of this application process, we needed to have matching funds. We looked at the existing projects that we've already awarded funds to in order to fulfill the requirements for the project. We submitted our application and we were awarded nearly $4 million in local housing trust funds. And we subsequently entered into a disposition development agreement with RCD for the Parcel Group 8 project. And we have now entered into the standard agreement with the state for the local housing trust funds. And through that process, we identified the requirement to have a public hearing in order to allocate funds to projects that we have already identified as being eligible for these funds. So looking at the Local Housing Trust Fund, these are awards, as I mentioned, that were awarded just through the state. The purpose is to promote and support affordable housing projects by providing a dollar for dollar match. So a really important component of the project is that the city is investing money in these projects from our own trust fund, which is our inclusionary housing trust funds, and that these funds can be used for the new construction and rehabilitation of housing that serves extremely low and moderate income households. This slide is mostly here to illustrate some of the complexity in the terms or the requirements for the local housing trust funds. And so what we did is we looked at our existing projects that would fulfill these requirements, both meeting the deep targeting requirements, 30% of the units providing housing, or sorry, let me explain, calm down a little and speak a little more clearly. We have to expend 30% of our funds on units that provide housing to households at 30% of the area median income. Most of the other units have to be targeted at low income households. And then there's a little margin for some allowance for moderate income. But more importantly, the city has to provide those matching funds at least the minimum 1-to-1 ratio. But the higher percentage of the more funds the city puts in, the more competitive we were for funding. So ideally, the city needed to have a 1-to-3 match ratio in order to be competitive for these funds. And these matching funds include not only the city's inclusionary housing trust funds, but any non-housing funds that the city would invest in these projects. And that's specifically important for this program because you get a higher score if you are going to provide these non-housing funds towards these housing projects. So as I mentioned, there's 2 projects that we are proposing to allocate funds to based on their eligibility for these funds and our proposal that was submitted to the state for awarding the Local Housing Trust Fund. This includes the Mission Paradise project, which is located on Mission Boulevard and Webster and Hancock. It is a 76 unit of affordable rental housing for low-income seniors. It includes amenities such as on-site laundry, community rooms, computing learning center, outdoor roof decks. We have some open space, exercise area, and a resource coordinator for the residents. The city has provided $1.2 million from the federal funds that we received and an additional $3.7 million for the Inclusionary Housing Trust Fund. And we have, what we're proposing is of the funds awarded, the nearly $4 million, to allocate a little over $1.1 million to this project to fill the funding gap for this project so that it can move to construction. As you'll note on this slide, the anticipated start date for construction is next month. So we are very close to starting construction on this project, and this is one of the very last pieces of the puzzle to get us to moving into construction. The other project is Parcel Group 8, the affordable housing components of that project, and it's on Grove Way and Foothill Boulevard. The project consists of 105 units, which includes mostly newly constructed units and some rehabilitation of existing units on the property. It's targeting households that are 60% of the area median income and below, has many amenities that are targeted for family housing, such as play areas, passive open space, community room, shared laundry room, secured bike parking, and resident services. We also are looking at, the city has already committed $2 million of funding to this project, but we've also, through our development and disposition agreement, have dedicated the land to this project. We are proposing to allocate a little over $2.6 million from the Local Housing Trust Fund, and this project is anticipated to start construction in 2024. So when we look at these 2 projects combined, they meet the affordability targets that are required by the local housing trust funds. we see that we meet the matching fund requirements as well. The city is putting in nearly almost $12 million, which is that 3-to-1 match, with the state providing us approximately $4 million. And that includes the land contribution that the city provided on parcel group 8. Because of that land donation, our contribution of matching funds that come from non-housing sources is 52%, which made us highly competitive for the application. And because we applied with this in mind, we have to fulfill this expectation by producing units that we promised in our initial proposal. We also wanted just to reference that these two projects combined will provide a proportion of our regional housing needs compliance. So it would fulfill 17% of the requirement for low-income households and over 6% compliance for our, I have this reversed. So 70% for very low-income household and 6% for our low-income households. So we're here before you tonight to recommend that you hold a public hearing and adopt 2 resolutions. One, a resolution in regards to awarding the local housing trust fund program funds to Mission Paradise in an amount of $1,150,000, and also authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute a loan agreement not to exceed $1,001,500. And also approve a resolution to allocate local housing trust funds to parcel group 8 in an amount of $2,645,161, and authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute loan documents with RCD in an amount not to exceed over $2.6 million. So this concludes my presentation as a public hearing. The next steps would be to entertain council questions, then public comment and council discussion and action. Thank you.
Thank you. So are there any questions? I can't see the, yeah, thanks. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So we'll open public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? Okay, Mr. Watley. And I see one person on Zoom. Okay.
Good evening, City Council. So with regard to, I guess these staff recommendations to award these, I guess, basically funds that are coming from the state of California's community, what's the name of that agency?
Housing and Community Development.
Department of Housing and Community Development, yeah. Okay, so it was mentioned it's about $4 million, and I guess that's these 2 projects that the staff is recommending that that $4 million gets divided somehow, 2.6 million to one project and 1,150,000 to the other project. So on the Mission Paradise project, it was mentioned that 1.2 million is going to be coming from Community Development Block Grant from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Is that correct? Or I guess I should save my questions for the end. So you're getting so that's coming from, I guess maybe this would be a question that would best be addressed. I don't know if Councilmember Lamnin is still on the Alameda County sort of housing body that sort of, and just for members of the public who might not be aware, the way that the federal funding for housing works in Alameda County is that all cities within Alameda County get this there's this housing body that meets and sort of divides the federal funds that come from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which come from the home program and the community block development grant funds. So what's interesting is that, is Berkeley a part of that committee? It seems Berkeley always has autonomy over like their public health, over their housing, and then every other city within Alameda County has to kind of, I don't know why the government set up that way. I think it's interesting that Berkeley is provided privileges and rights that other cities within Alameda County are not, and I don't know if that has anything to do with the fact that you see Berkeley's there, and there's a lot of smart people who comprise the city of Berkeley, and they kind of figure out these ways to sort of increase their power and autonomy while letting the rest of Alameda County sort of, you know, maybe have not so many rights and privileges. Just an observation. What kind of public oversight is in place right now with the state of California and the federal government to ensure that these federal funds are being spent properly, or will be spent properly by both Mission Paradise and Parcel Group 8?
Thank you. Your
And
time
can I
is
follow up on that with who? Sarah?
We can have Ms. Morales follow up with
Rick Morales?
Christina Morales.
Christina
our housing
Morales.
director.
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you, Ms. Morales, for your presentation. I really appreciate the information that you provided. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then we have Ro Aguilar.
Good evening. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I want to applaud the efforts, again, of the city and staff to build these affordable housing units. They are much needed, and I don't want to criticize them in any way. I'm praising them because I think they are much needed, and so I thank you for doing this. I'm grateful. My point that I want to make on this is that they are not inclusionary, and in fact, the one on Grove Way and Foothill is going to be fairly isolated from everyone, I guess. And so looking at the big picture, I am referring to my questions in my comments in the letter I wrote on the last item. This is what I would like to know, and I think it would be helpful for the council to know when they're hearing these kind of presentations. What is the percentage and number of units of inclusionary affordable housing built or approved in Hayward? What is the percentage versus the total number of housing units? Second, over the time period of the last 8 or even 17 years, how many affordable inclusionary owner-occupied units, owner-occupied, not rental, these are rental, have been built or approved in the following income categories, and your 3 categories, very low, low, moderate, and how many what percentage of inclusionary rental units? But from my standpoint, I'm more interested in the percentage and number of owner-occupied units that have been built. Because, as I say, in the big picture, these units, affordable rental units are great, they're needed, but we're looking for balance here. And what I don't have a sense of the balance in Hayward, because I've never heard anybody speak to these 2 questions of what is the percentage and number of owner-occupied, on-site, inclusionary affordable housing versus rental inclusionary versus standalone total affordable rental. So I hope that I made myself clear, but the questions I think are written down and they're pretty clear, and I would like the staff to respond to those questions if when possible, and I thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other member of the public who would like to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and we'll move on to council comments and hopefully a motion. I will say that I think we'll have, I don't know whether they'll connect. Mr. Wiley, you may want to try to call, or will we have Ms. Morales call him maybe? And also Ms. Aguilar, I don't know if you have that information offhand, but it would be actually an interesting thing to know and look at if we possibly could. I think owner occupied is a difficult question because we don't always know if the house. Well, we should though. We should know if it's being rented as opposed to occupied. So I know I've heard figures of ownership. Oh, are we up to that high? 62% ownership? Sounds higher than I've heard.
That's last I heard, 52% homeownership.
52. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, perhaps if you have more information on that, you could, let Ms. Aguilar know and let all the rest of us know what that answer is. Okay. So with that, Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. I really do appreciate staff's work on this. I will say it kind of sucks to see this establishment. And I just want to be very clear because I saw the maps, but I wasn't 100% sure. Is the Mission Paradise the old Mission Paradise that is now converting?
In terms of its former entitlement?
Would you be able to go to the map? Yeah, I just want to.
I'm not sure there was a map in my present.
Or like a.
The rendering?
Yeah, there we go.
It's a new building, right? It's a new.
Correct. It's currently vacant land.
I think something. Are you thinking of something that was named Mission Paradise?
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to make sure that wasn't the case. That's why I couldn't. No. It's in that rough area too. So yeah. Okay, so
I tried the wrong one. This one.
Yeah, I was looking at the street names. Yeah, the other Mission Paradise is also on Mission Boulevard.
It was previously entitled Market Rate Senior Housing Project, and it was acquired by EH in 2019. And at that point, they converted it to an affordable housing project.
Okay. I just want to say I'm happy to move the item. But number two is also the fact that I think that this is very good. Are we able to kind of really solidify that it's for Hayward residents? Are we able to do that?
So in this particular case, there were Alameda County Measure A1 funds applied to this project from the county's regional pool. And because of that funding source, they won't allow any kind of local preference on this project. So on this specific project that has these Measure A1 funds, the city cannot impose their local preference. Otherwise, we typically do.
Okay, and part two, are they one bedrooms or two bedrooms or what's kind of the makeup?
It's predominantly one bedrooms, but there are a few 2-bedroom units.
Okay, now if that 62-year-old, because I do know a lot of grandparents that are taking, or I will say seniors that are taking care of their grandkids or have custody of their grandkids, are they allowed to be with somebody under the age of 62 and still be part of this development?
And I am going to defer to the developer, the representative from EAH, Tessa Quintanilla, if she is available to answer that question. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.
That's a great question. It is restricted to 62 and older, but I'm not sure if it's enough to just have one person from the household that's 62 and older, and if they could have a younger person, but I can definitely check in with my compliance department and get back to you all.
Okay. If Tessa, I appreciate your comments, and I hope that we can advocate for a 62-year-old and older individual being able to have younger people with them, because some of them do have custody of their grandkids, an extended family member, things like that. So I do just want to highlight that as much as possible. And it just opens up opportunity for family taking care of each other, especially if they are lower income, if they are falling on hard times, if a family member passed away or is having trouble of their own. So I do want to highlight that. I think the Mason case is an example where the grandmother was taking care of the granddaughter for the most part too. So if we can help out in that way, I would appreciate that as well.
That makes a lot of sense. I'll look into it and we'll get back to you.
Okay. And then as far as this, I think one of the questions that we did see, so the parcel group 8, and I just want to 100% make sure, when we're talking about the area median income, what is the actual dollar amount?
What
just one, so in terms of the income limit?
Is it like 72,000? Is it 45,000? It's, what is that?
So it's targeting a range of, for the parcel group 8, it's targeting a range of affordability levels. And so let me see if I can pull it up quickly. To give you a sense, so the project will target 30% AMI households, 50, 60. And so let me give you just some examples for a household size of if it is a 4-person household and extremely low, like 30% AMI, household income would be about $42,850. Let's say if it's a smaller unit that you're targeting, a 1 or 2 bedroom, the income limit would be around $30,000. For, let's say, a very low income, the income limit would be around $71,400. And for the low income, under the TCAC regulations, they're going to be slightly lower, but our limits for low income are $109,600.
Okay, and so what about, let's say, a couple rather than a family of 4?
So for a couple at extremely low income, it would be $34,300, very low $57,150, and for low income, $87,700. But for this particular project, I think their low income limit is lower.
Okay, and the reason why I say that is because the property on A Street that was, I want to call it the 808 property, we received a lot of complaints about that. That is a senior housing complex, but a lot of seniors, I think the average per year is about anywhere from 24,000 and up to be able to be a part of that complex. And most seniors, and I stated this in our last call, the senior population is actually concerning to me right now because of potentially the impact in the next couple of years to them. But if they are on a fixed income and roughly making $1,000, $800 on Social Security or retirement or disability or anything like that, even $1,200, they can't reach that goal, right? So I just want to make sure that we are really advocating to hit our lowest income populations, and not based on a family of 4, but based on 2 or an individual or, I feel like seniors tend to get a little bit smaller and more, the nest is empty, if you will. So
yeah, and I'm afraid I misunderstood. I thought we were talking about the Parcel Group 8 project. So one thing to note on the Mission Paradise project is they actually have 25 project-based Section 8 vouchers. So individuals who qualify for their units, their rent would be relative to their income. They would only pay 30% of their income on rent. So in addition to having those deep targeting for the affordable units, you're also going to have a number of those units with the project-based subsidy. And so their rent payment will be relative to their income.
Okay, perfect. All right. Other than that, I do appreciate it. Ms. Morales, I always appreciate the work that you do. So thank you so much. And, like I said, I'm happy to move this item.
And I will second it. And with that, let's see, Council Member Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Housing Manager Morales, for your presentation. Can you elaborate? I understand on the senior housing project, because of the county funds, we cannot implement a preference for Hayward residents. But let's say hypothetically in the future, there's a different project. Can you just remind us what that preference looks like? How is that monitored by the city, or how do we ensure that our residents are getting a first opportunity at these?
So under the affordable housing ordinance, we have a live work preference. So if an individual qualifies as either a Hayward resident or are currently employed in the city of Hayward, they would have priority placement on the wait list. So when the lottery is conducted, anybody who meets those eligibility criteria would float to the top of the lottery list. And then anyone who doesn't meet those criteria would be reviewed later in the list. They basically, if they don't get selected for a unit in the first go round, they get placed on the wait list. So it's most important in the lottery portion of lease up, so that our Hayward residents or people who work in Hayward would have the first opportunity to rank for the affordable units. And that applies not only to these 100% affordable project, but any inclusionary unit.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's good to hear. And in terms of the live requirement to be a resident of the city of Hayward, is there a minimum years, 3 years, 5 years, or just currently living? Is there any parameters around that?
Correct. So there's no minimum requirement for years.
Councilmember Marquez?
Yes, Mayor, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councilmember Zermeño.
Mayor, thank you, and Ms. Morales, thank you also for the report. Very good. I like both projects. And the question of homeownership came up. So in my mind, since we want to offer as many affordable units as possible to the residents of Hayward, in my mind, we then have more apartments as opposed to homeowner opportunities. Is that what's happening? No, I'm not sure. I see home ownership as being slightly more expensive than renting. So am I thinking wrong?
I guess it depends on the context. So in terms of affordable units, there are more affordable rental units that are under development right now. And there are some, can't recall the number right now, but I think we have maybe just over 100 inclusionary affordable units that are ownership, that are in various stages of development. And so those would target moderate income. So with the rental housing projects that are providing affordable housing, they're targeting a different demographic, providing deeply affordable units versus the on-site inclusionary units, which are providing units to moderate income households and are really targeted for individuals who can get the mortgage financing needed in order to purchase. So they're serving different demographics, but more ownership housing is being developed in general in terms of our market rate development versus rental housing. So we're not seeing much in terms of the development of market rate rental housing in the city of Hayward.
Okay, got it. Okay, I stand corrected. So thank you very much. It's good. Both are good projects, so I will support the motion. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, and I, having seconded the motion, certainly will support it, and I just want to commend staff again on this, cobbling funds, cobbling some money from here and some money from there and some money from our own, and putting together and providing, how many is it all together? 176 with the two projects, something like that. Affordable housing units, much needed here in Hayward and throughout the region and state. It isn't an easy task, and the complexity of the staff report certainly, speaks to the complexity of how this was all put together. But if all goes well, we will soon see, these units in existence, and people will be living there, and that will be a good thing. So with that, on the motion by Councilmember Wahab and seconded by myself, Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Aye.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes, and the motion carries with 7 aye votes. Great work, everyone. Okay, that brings us to item number 6, which is the regarding the Manon Avenue townhomes, which adoption of the ordinance amending our zoning ordinance to, to approve this project. The ordinance was introduced last week, and this is the second reading, and I'm going to turn this over to our city clerk to further elaborate on why we're seeing this on our regular agenda.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. As you mentioned, the item before you is the adoption of an ordinance which was introduced last Tuesday on October 11th by Councilmember Salinas. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 10, Article 1 of the Hayward Municipal Code. Generally, the adoption of an ordinance would appear under the consent calendar, but because the item did not receive unanimous support, that's why it was placed under ledge business. And there's no report. It's just to highlight that the item didn't receive unanimous support. And that concludes the summary, Mayor. And as a legislative business item, you are welcome to open public comment and then discussion and then action by council. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, well, so first I'll ask if anyone on council has any questions about this. I'm not seeing any hands raised, so we'll go to public comment. Is there anyone who would like to comment on this item? Mr. Watley?
Hi, David Watley. So is this the project, the 22 rental homes, is this the one where Councilmember Wahab was the only dissenting vote? So I think it's important that, rather than just sort of go through the procedure of having the administrative procedure of having to sort of, have it be read by the clerk again, I think it's important sort of just to highlight why there was a dissenting vote. We know that in the highest court of the land, for example, a dissenting vote can be, or oftentimes is, very significant for policy discussions that might follow that vote, right? And so even though Councilmember Wahab is the dissenting vote and the majority is still prevailing on this and it's still going to go through and we just have to read it a second time, I guess it's an administrative procedure, I think that it might be beneficial to sort of review what were the concerns as to why Councilmember Wahab voted in dissent. Is there just kind of like a one-sentence summary that can be provided to members of the public as to why Councilmember Wahab voted as the sole dissenting vote on this project from the previous meeting, at the meeting where this was voted upon? Sorry if that makes sense.
Councilmember Wahab may be able to, if she wishes to comment on that when you're done. So
okay, so yeah, if Councilmember, hi Aisha, if there's a way you can maybe just provide a 1-sentence or 2-sentence sort of summary as to why you dissented for the public, I think that might be helpful, especially people who are trying to make their decisions as to who they should vote for in the state Senate.
Is there any other member of the public who would like to comment on this issue? Seeing no one, I'll close public comment and we will go to Councilmember Salinas.
Thank you. I'd like to move the item.
All right, the item has been moved by Councilmember Salinas, seconded by Councilmember Cermeño. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on the item? On the council, seeing no one, Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Go ahead and, Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Aye.
Councilmember Cermeño.
See.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes, and the motion passes with 7 aye votes. Thank you. All right. Now we will move on to council reports and announcements.
Madam Mayor, I have an announcement.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to announce that next Saturday is going to be trunk or treat at the Heritage Plaza Park. We're going to shut down C Street, and there's going to be Hayward and Hayward area organizations distributing resources and information and connecting families to wonderful services that are throughout the area. But at the same time, kids are encouraged to come with in costume, and because all the organizations will be they would have decorated their trunk, and they're going to be passing out candy. So that's next week. Also, that's next Saturday. But this Saturday is California State University East Bay Preview Day. And this is a day where Hayward families can go on up to Cal State East Bay and ask questions about what does it take to get to Cal State? How much does it cost to pay for Cal State? And of course, the most important question is how fast can I graduate from Cal State? And so that'll be this Saturday up at Cal State East Bay. So go on up there, and it'll be a big event, and there'll be a lot of people up there. So see you up there. Thank you.
Just want to clarify, though, that on the trunk or treat, it is not just kids who get to dress up in costumes, because I recall that I dressed up in one last year, and a lot of other adults did too, but none of my fellow councilmen. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Lamb. I won't even say that's it. Oh, that's right. Sorry, I remember now. Some of them didn't, but yes. Okay.
I think I saw Councilmember Andrews. I think I saw, of course, Mayor Halliday and Councilmember Lamnin. I believe I saw full
there
costume.
were some very clever costumes. Actually, I remember
Exactly.
Councilmember Lamnin's that. So, but anyway, just wanted to clarify that, not just for kids. It can be, fun for everyone, adults too.
And it is also a pet-friendly event.
Ah, okay. Yes, that's right. And there were pets in costume too, as I recall. So, and a lot of kids, but all right. So now, thank you for that. And now we'll go to Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to give a few highlights, things that took place in the past week. A few of us attended the first annual golf tournament and dinner fundraiser for La Familia Counseling Service. It was a really great event at Stonebray. A lot of people came out to support them, so just wanted to congratulate them. And I know all of our nonprofits have different capacity and bandwidth to do these events, but it is important to see our local organizations fundraise and try to secure funds. So I just want to applaud them for those efforts and for all the great work they do in the community. Also want to highlight that last Wednesday, I did walk to Tyrell Elementary School to participate in the International Walk and Roll to School Day. And I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Principal Dr. Stacy Butler. I believe she's been the principal of Tyrell Elementary School for over 12 years. And the campus is just amazing. I don't think people realize what an amazing asset and gem that campus is. The staff there, it's just really positive energy. The children were just ecstatic to be at school. Really good show out from our police department, and just a lot of support encouraging our students and families to have a productive and positive day. So just wanted to thank everyone for participating in that event and just acknowledge all the educators for all their great work, and especially those that stand in these positions for continuity and stability. I think that makes a big difference in our community. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I was at the same event at Cherryland, actually, which I know isn't actually in the city of Hayward, but it's a Hayward Unified School District. And what was really heartwarming was to see how many kids actually did walk to school. I mean, more were driven or dropped off, but there were a lot of walkers, so that is good to see, since the event was stroll or roll.
Actually, Cherryland Elementary School is in Hayward.
Oh my gosh, okay. I'm glad, it is that border, I don't know, are you sure about that? Because I've been told different things at different times, but we need to clarify that. On its new campus, not the, okay. All right, well, okay, Councilmember Andrews, who had a great costume last year at the trunk or treat, right?
I was a lion, just so you know. I'll try to do better this year, I promise. I wanted to say that we all, I mentioned it during the last meeting, that we are having a Keep Hayward Clean and Green event this Saturday at Tennyson Park from 8:30 to noon. So please come out if you would like to help us clean up. And we also have a couple of other Halloween events as well. Believe there's also a trunk or treat at Eden Youth and Family Center from 12 to 4. And I think theirs is actually on the 22nd. And then we have the other one at the 29th. And then there's another Halloween event for kids on the 29th from 6 to 8 for Treasures Unleashed at 971 B Street. So it's a performance arts program that also caters to kids. So yes, a lot of Halloween things are happening in the next couple of weekends. So that's all.
Well, I think that there haven't been as many the last couple of years. So it's good that I think we feel safer now about coming out and letting the kids come out and do those fun things. Okay, with that, Councilmember Cermeño.
Yes. So this Saturday, as colleague Andrews mentioned, is the Clean and Green cleaning at Tennyson Park. It is actually Make a Difference Day. So my thought is I encourage you to clean your street. Let's everybody clean their street in front of the house and really make a difference day. So spread the word. Thank you and see you around.
All right, thank you. And so with that, we have no council referrals tonight. Our next meeting will be a week from tonight, October 25th at 7 p.m. And until then, this meeting is adjourned.